Thank you for tuning in to the Seller Community Podcast. This is part 2 of a 3-part podcast on eBay SEO listing optimization with Dave Snyder. To listen to part 1, click the link above. Today we're welcoming Dave Snyder back to the show. You may remember Dave from episode 8, our very first eBay SEO conversation. So if you're not familiar with Dave, you have to listen to his first episode. Go back and listen to episode 8. Dave is the founder and chief analyst for ListRankSell, an SEO firm that specializes in eBay SEO. So we covered so much in episode 8. We have so many more questions from the community. Dave, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me back.
So, Dave, we talked a lot on your first appearance. Your episode was extremely popular, still is, and our most downloaded episode. We had multiple requests to have you back. So you also recently ran a blog post called the eBay SEO interview that caused a stir, which we will link in the show notes. And let's talk about that a little bit leading into your follow-up interview.
Yeah, I was surprised a little bit. I expected people to be interested because there's really no one that we've talked to that's not interested in this subject at all. I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, when you started telling me how people were responding to it, that's great because I had kind of set it aside because I just got to get back to work. And I don't get a lot of opportunities to talk about this subject. And I kind of just went off and, spoke what was coming to my mind. And I thought, well, that was okay. Didn't necessarily think it was the greatest interview. I mean, you don't look at yourself and go, oh, that was great. I don't generally. Anyways, I was kind of like, okay. And so, yeah, very, very, grateful for the opportunity, obviously. But then also, I love talking about it. So
it's a very important subject. And I think sellers are very keen, especially nowadays. We hear SEO get thrown around everywhere. And sometimes you'll ask people, well, what's SEO? And they're like, it's SEO, but they know it's important, but they don't know what it is. Yeah. And we're hearing a lot more about it in the community. And to have somebody such as yourself that has been doing this for years upon years upon years, that do deep research, and this is what you do every single day. It's a treat to hear like somebody that is in this every day and not just somebody saying, oh, well, I did this once and it worked.
The very first time I tested SEO on eBay was a printer cable. It was made by Compaq, and it was called a parallel port. This is the old type of cable. Okay. And that word old is very important. I used the parallel port description. I took numbers off of the side of the cable. I put the brand in, all this stuff. Couldn't get it to sell. And this was even before I started doing actual keyword research. I thought, who would buy this cable? It'd be like my dad, who'd have like an old printer. Right. So I put old printer cable in the title, and in like 24 hours it sold. Right. So I kind of thought, okay, there's something to this. This is even before I started testing technically. But I realized at that point that obviously that same connection between what your buyers or your searchers are searching and what is in your title have to be the same. One of the issues with the seller community is that there is an assumption that the one change you made is what resulted in the result that you got.
Right.
Okay. There are many things taking place all at the same time, especially if you are selling things that people want. So people are linking to you whether you know it or not. They're finding you in Pinterest, finding you all over the internet. If what you're selling, no one's paying any attention to, and you're not getting really much any engagement, then it's possible then that you can definitely connect those two things. But one of the biggest challenges is, markets change. And, we were working with a seller of men's ties, and it just happened that during the 6 months of our campaign, the size of the men's ties market in eBay UK tripled. Okay. And so, literally the total number of listings that appeared for men's ties tripled in that time. And so if you aren't paying attention to that sort of thing, and you look at your listings and go, why aren't my men's ties selling? A significant change can take place fairly quickly in a market, sometimes overnight almost. And those things are oftentimes things that you aren't tracking, you don't know about. The automatic assumption, I did such and such, this happened, and those two are necessarily connected. They might be, but it's very hard to prove. It may not have caused it. One of the main things that needs to be understood is that if you take a single SEO technique
Mm-hmm.
and you apply it to
Mm-hmm.
your listings, you may or may not see a significant change right away. And you may not see much of a change at all. SEO is meant to be practiced as a whole. So
Mm-hmm.
when we go into a campaign, typically we're working with a seller that's got a lot of problems. In fact, we have turned clients down because pretty much their listings are okay. But
Right.
when we can tell there's a lot of room for improvement here, and if we go in and we optimize their categories, their item specifics, and their titles, we are going to see a significant improvement. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just know that from experience. And then I can look at another store and go, not so much. There really isn't that much room. So on the one hand, it's like good news, your SEO is pretty solid. Bad news, you're not going to see much change if we go in and tweak things. If you already kind of know what you're doing, if you're already one of those sellers who spends a lot of time cultivating your titles, for example, and you actually are doing some genuine keyword research, our algorithm will show us what keyword phrases particular to that item
Mm-hmm.
are most likely to surface that listing in search. It might help you, but unless there's like the smoking gun, which sometimes we find where there's a term that buyers are searching in droves and most sellers are avoiding for whatever reason, then when that term is searched, our clients' listings, because hopefully our client has a bunch of listings like that. We actually discovered this with a seller of metal detectors. They sold these long range metal detectors, which can see long distances, but the term long range is not a very strong term for search.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's used consistently by competitors, but it's not searched often enough to make it a strong term. But there's another term that means the same thing.
Okay.
And no one was practically, we're talking like 5 sellers were using that. And our client had like 30 of these. Okay. And they sell between $15,000 and $20,000. They're very expensive detectors. And so when you search that phrase, our client's listings just dominated the page. So sometimes we will discover a term like that, and that we, then we know this, this is part of the puzzle. If what you're intending to do is to test out this technique and see what happens, test out this technique, then you're wasting your time because that's not how it was meant to be applied. Okay. SEO has to be done holistically. So when we go in, it's very rare that we just do one aspect. We've been asked for it by specific clients, and in the right situation, we'll do it. But it's rare that we do that. Mm-hmm. What we do is we fully optimize as many listings as we can during the time that they've paid for. Those listings are completely optimized, not just, we tweak the titles. So what most sellers, I feel, do is they tweak something and then watch, and then they prove to themselves this was worthless. And I don't know why you would do that. I don't know why you would spend your time at all. If you've already determined that this probably isn't going to work, don't bother with it. If you're already fairly happy with your sales, don't worry about SEO because you're just going to drive yourself nuts. SEO is really only for super, super serious sellers who are willing to pay for it. Yes, I can give people advice. And yes, people have said, wow, our sales doubled because of what you told us. Those listings were really, really bad. Okay. If they only made one change and their sales doubled, then the listings were already so bad that perhaps a change that wasn't SEO related could have resulted in a similar result. Traditionally, impressions, which are the visibility of the listing, is so suppressed that when we go in and optimize the whole thing, 6 months in, working with the company that invented what's known as a train horn, which is a truck horn that sounds like a train. Mm-hmm. They invented this. They've got great brand awareness. People know their products, but you just couldn't find them in search. Okay. And
because their listings were that bad.
Well, their listings were actually
the SEO.
Yes. So from a conversion point of view, like they actually have in their description, you can click on a button that will let you hear the horn because every horn sounds different. They've got great photographs, no issues along any of those lines. Pricing, they're really reasonably priced, but you could not find them in search. So in that setting, so their SEO sucked, and you're not going to know most of that. In that setting, visibility increased by over 500% year over year, 6 months into the project, and net sales were up like 240%, gross sales like 180%. That's a fairly typical result when we're working with someone on a hands-on basis, long-term, they can't find their listings in search well, but everything else is kind of in place because we don't do conversion. Like we don't tweak images. You know, we only work on the listings from a search point of view. So most sellers who maybe listen to this podcast are assuming that, okay, if I take that one technique he gave us, that's going to result in huge increases in sales. It didn't. It doesn't work. That's not how SEO was meant to be applied.
So this is what I'm hearing. SEO isn't changing a title or changing a category or changing item specifics or changing a price. It's a culmination of all of it into a package.
Yes. And it's also not about regularly tweaking those things. The seller community is inundated with this concept in their heads that they're supposed to be regularly tweaking existing listings. And what sellers really ought to be doing is increasing the size of their stores. More important than tweaking existing listings. When we optimize a store, we do not worry about single listings. We may optimize, like most of our clients have large categories where there's say 100 different types of sandpaper, for example, and we optimize all of those. Some of them are going to respond, some of them aren't. We don't worry about the ones that don't. What we're looking at is the overall result from the work we've done. What a lot of sellers do is they optimize a single listing and then see what happens, as though SEO doesn't really work that way. Okay, it's very much holistic. If you've only got 15 listings or 20, let's say you've got 100, not enough. We won't optimize anything under 250, and we don't even have to optimize all of them. If you have 50 listings and they are in a store of 500, those 50 listings will sell better by themselves than a store of the same 50 listings that only have those 50 listings. I don't know what the relationship is. I've never been able to determine it, but just the sheer number of listings will impact the sales of single listings. So, I mean, it's obvious that if you have more listings, you sell more, but that group of listings will actually do better in a store on eBay if you have more. So if you've got a great product and you've got 5 different versions of it, and you're going to list those on Amazon, they may very well sell. Not going to happen on eBay. And it's very, very rare if it ever takes place. More than worrying about why something hasn't sold. If you pretty much know what you're doing from a conversion point of view, you know how to price, you're photographing well, etc., then I would just increase your store size. Do not change what we've done. Okay. And I've seen this countless times in the beginning where I would get hired and I would be one freelancer in a line of freelancers. And I would go back and just kind of check my work and find that they had changed everything. Okay. And then I have even been contacted by clients like that again. Could you fix these? Leave them alone, because we chose those terms for a reason. We're not testing those terms. Okay. We're not testing them and saying, oh, if we use this word, will it help it sell? Okay. We did our research. We know what our buyers are searching for this item. Those are the terms we used. You optimize it and then you leave it. It's a cycle. So just changing keywords, you'll start to show up for some phrases you weren't showing up for before if you're doing your keyword research. That will help you just appear more often. That should then turn back to maybe a couple of sales. As it sells better, it will start to rank better. As it ranks better, it'll start to sell better. That's obviously multi-quantity, and that's what we work on a hands-on basis. But that's how the process works. When you optimize a listing, if you go back and change it, this was the category it was supposed to be in. You did your research. You know what the category is. Don't change the category. We are being told by the community, tweak your listings. Always be tweaking. Why?
So I've got a question, but what about when those listings go stale? Talk to me about stale listings.
Yeah, I did an article about stale listings that got a lot of attention in Google because it's such a hot topic. Stale listings don't exist. Okay. So they do and they don't. A listing does not grow stale over time on the sheer basis of how long it's been on the site. Like we mentioned before, if it has grown stale, it was stale to begin with. There's something wrong with it to start with. It's a very complex topic for sellers because they believe that, well, it's been on the site too long. And that's why it's not ranking well. It's not ranking well because there's something wrong with it. What will happen is the listing will go down in search, right? And so they tweak it. And then maybe they say a bit of a boost and then it goes back down again. Then they tweak it again. Okay. Whatever their tweak is. I don't know. And of course, this all comes down to what keyword phrases you're testing. I have to show up at the top of search for a 2-word phrase, right? And there's 200,000 of these for sale on eBay. Generally impossible to do unless you're paying for ads. And it's not necessary to do if you actually spend the time optimizing your listings. So from a tweaking point of view, when you optimize something, you truly optimize it. It needs time. The search engine needs time to respond to what you've done. And you're looking at a minimum of 90 days for the search engine to properly respond to what you've done. One of the reasons why people do so poorly on eBay is because they constantly tweak, okay? They didn't believe in the change they made in the first place, okay? If you believed in that change, stick to it. If you have a reason to believe, not just it came out of your head, okay, asking yourself is a myth. You don't know what your buyers are searching until you research it. You need a tool that digs into eBay's autocomplete, which is their database, collects the keywords used by your buyers. Keyword tool like keywordtool.io has a free version that sellers can use. It gives you about 2/3 of the keywords that are available. Keyword Tool Dominator, which is the one that we use, gives you pretty much everything. And that's the one that we prefer. It's a one-time fee. Those dig into the keywords that your buyers, so let's say you're selling a Charlie Brown figurine. You would put Charlie Brown figurine into the tool and see what people are searching in addition to that term. And you'd be quite interested, whether they're searching by material or by size, perhaps. You want to know exactly what your buyers are searching. I'll give you a great example. A client of ours sells used wheel rims, and the phrase 5 lug or 4 lug is one of the most important terms from a search point of view. Not something I would have ever thought of myself. Right. I would think like alloy would be an important term. It's not even searched for most of the wheel rims that we researched. So we are using the term alloy, okay? But you do have to have wheel rim in every title because eBay is still quite dependent in some ways on exact match, which means you have to have the exact term. So if someone searches wheel rim and you don't have both words, you're not going to appear. Now, that's not the case for other terms. Work with a client that sells antique Bibles, and the term antique, actually, eBay can get that term from the item specifics. That's called relevant recall. Okay, so there's a technology eBay uses to take certain terms from your item specifics. But unless you know exactly how to test for that, you just want to stick with what your buyers are searching, leave those and use those keywords. If I know that my buyers are searching, 1900s illustrated antique Bible, blah, blah, blah. I know what they're searching specifically. Why would I go back and change those keywords? Right. Okay. The only reason why you would continue to do that is if you don't know what you're doing in the first place. You're just testing things. Oh, maybe this work, maybe that'll work. If that's what you're doing, forget SEO, because you will never make SEO work. And that really has to be stressed. It's an industry. It's a practice. It's a science. People say it's more of an art than a science. No, it's a science.
It's a science. Okay. Yeah.
It's absolutely a science.
I want to back up just a second because I want to make sure people heard what you said when you're talking about these keyword tools, and these keyword tools are giving you what buyers are searching. I think that's very important. It's giving you what buyers are searching, not what is existing on the website.
eBay itself will frequently recommend Terapeak as a keyword tool. It is not a keyword tool. It's a product research tool. It's a great product research tool. We use it all the time, but we do not use it for keywords. Just because a seller is selling well does not mean that every keyword in that title is a good keyword for search. Some of them had to have been, but the only way you're going to know which ones were is to do the research in terms of what the buyers are actually searching. It's quite common to see terms that people aren't searching. I had a conversation with a guy who used to work for eBay on LinkedIn a while back, who had a cat toy that was selling really well. And it was simply it was a green paper mat. It's like a grass, looks like grass. It's like a one-use only thing. And it was like selling for £3, free shipping. And it sold so well because it was so cheap. And so it ranked really well. Well, Terapeak, you're going to look at that and go, oh, well, these must be good keywords. He didn't even have the term cat mat in the title. He was trying to show up for cat toys. That's what he wanted to show up for. He had free postage in his title. He had a whole slew of keywords in that were not getting him found at all. Within a week or two of that conversation, I went back and looked, and he was no longer to be seen. Okay, he was at the top, like the third from in organic search in eBay UK for a short time, and then he was gone. So this guy's going to go back and tweak. Well, what did I do wrong? Well, if he knew what he was doing from the beginning, if he described the item, if he went and did his keyword research around cat mats or cat grass mat or whatever the entity is, because it's not just a cat toy. It's a very specific kind of cat toy. And you've got to know what that is and then build your keywords around that. Okay. So are they searching by the color, for example, because it was green? If they're not, don't bother putting green in the title. Okay. You've got to put green in the item specifics for sure. But you only want to use the terms that your buyers are actually searching for that item. And you'd be shocked at what kind of result that will have. But simply going in and going, oh, well, that listing was using this term, that must be a good term for search.
Right.
You don't know that.
Yeah. And I found this really interesting. I did a little bit of research, and this is surface research. Just as an example, it was something probably like a Lululemon men's tank top. And one of the keywords that was recommended was marathon. I wouldn't have put marathon in a men's tank top, but apparently it was a running tank top.
Okay.
And marathon was a keyword because I don't know, it could have been a marathon season. It could have been, maybe that's a search term that people look for when they run in marathons.
Right. So you would have to then know, just because some tool suggested it, here's something else. When we get into a client relationship, we will find everything being searched for that product type. Okay. We will mine everything we can find. We got a process we use to get as many keyword phrases as we can. We then sort that with our algorithm, and then we look at the top 100 and we talk to our client to make sure, like for the metal detectors, there was a pretty popular phrase, junior metal detector. So we needed to know, are any of the metal detectors that you sell, are they considered junior? Okay. You have to know for sure before you just, oh, that's a good term for search, start using it. Okay.
That is such a great point. Yeah.
Right. So you would have to know that was used. For example, is there a marathon style? So if there's a marathon style and you can confirm that this is a marathon style, therefore, yeah, that's probably a good term for search. But just because it's searched with your core phrase, the entity, what the thing is, doesn't mean that it applies to what you're selling. So that's also like a big misnomer is, well, it's people search it. Yeah, but does it describe what you're selling? Because it won't get what you're selling to sell unless it describes it. So
because I can get people to my listing with marathon in the tank top, but if it's just a casual athleisure cotton tank top,
a marathon tank top, you're going to upset them, and they're going to go somewhere else.
And that conversion's going to just go down. I mean, it's
true,
right?
Yes, correct.
Because people aren't going to want to buy it.
Conversion rate, that's another kind of, there's too much attention applied to the conversion rate. You're not so much concerned about the conversion rate in that case. You're concerned about losing the buyer.
Right.
Okay. You're concerned about the fact that maybe that buyer would have bought something else from you, a different kind of tank top. Let's say you've got other tank tops, but they went away because you just spammed the search engine. Okay. That's actually a violation of eBay search manipulation policy. Okay. So you do not want to ever put a term in your title that does not distinctly describe the item. Now, not every word that describes the item is going to be good for search. Okay. So you may have terms that describe the item that people aren't searching. You don't want to use those, but every term you do use has to describe exactly the thing you're searching. Now, they may be kind of general phrases that people are searching. We were doing this set of watches, and it turns out that including in the title things like for men, for women are actually quite important. But if someone searches certain terms, like waterproof was another one, even though it's in the item specifics, eBay may not currently be looking to the item specifics for that term. You may want to put out like a very specific thing that differentiates that watch. But if that's not the most important terms being searched for that watch, you want to use those terms. Keyword Tool Dominator has a ranking process. It ranks the most important to least important. And it's not bad. I like ours better, obviously. But it is something that if you use it, it will kind of rank them from most important to least important. Sometimes the general terms are very important, essential to have in your title. But back to the sales conversion rate, not a single patent that I've read ever references the conversion rate in its description of eBay's algorithm. And there have been a lot of patents written about the algorithm. I just read one and tweeted it from the List Rank Sell account like last week on eBay's ranking factor. And very interesting stuff in that patent. But what's interesting is that clicks are an engagement factor according to the patents. That's one of the reasons why I wouldn't end and relist, because even, and I definitely want to talk about that topic, but everyone says, oh, if you tank your sales conversion rate, you're going to tank. Everyone believes that, and it's logical. Okay, it's very logical to think, and I've read it from very reputable sources. People that I respect even have written that, but I haven't actually been able to bear that out with testing, and we don't actually worry too much about either this. So in a successful SEO campaign, the click-through rate is going to stay the same typically, or even go down, because the click-through behavior rather is not going to necessarily keep up with the increased visibility. So the clients that we work with, their visibility is so low that the visibility just skyrockets, and that the natural interest in the item can't necessarily keep up. This is a very consistent reality with, I've been testing this since the beginning, that, the very first time I saw it, it scared me to death. Why is the click-through rate going down? Sales conversion rate, on the other hand, will tend to increase, will tend to increase gradually. If you're working with a practitioner who focuses on conversions, let's say you've got terrible photos and they improve your photos, your sales conversion rate is probably going to go up a lot more than it would in an SEO campaign, because SEO doesn't focus on conversions. Okay, it will increase your sales. We tend to see the biggest increases in impressions and sales and transactions. Conversion rate will tend to gradually increase, but we don't really worry about it. We're more concerned about, did our bottom line improve?
Did we get the sales?
Yes.
That's right. What it boils down to. And did I make a sale?
People will say, don't send traffic to your listing that doesn't convert because it'll bring the conversion rate down. I wouldn't worry about that. I would get it as visible to as many people that could potentially be interested in it as possible. Don't get visibility for visibility's sake. Okay, don't do that. But that's kind of just logical. Get the eyeballs on the listing that people are actually interested in it. Don't worry about your conversion rate.
I have like 100 different thoughts right now. If you can see my brain right now, it looks like one of those chalkboards with like writing all over it because I have so many questions. But that just leads me to exactly what I hear constantly, or kind of this thing with item specifics. And I would imagine item specifics play into SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so item specifics flow from the category. And the category has to be correct first. If it's not, the item specifics won't be right. Okay. Now, they are changing things so that, like, for example, let's say I'm selling an automotive product. I select brand. That brand field is pretty much the same field, regardless of what category I'm in. But if, we had a client that was selling the wheels, they had their category their wheels in the wrong category. When we put them back to wheels, suddenly the item specifics change, obviously. And now they can appear in the filters in search that apply to those item specifics. The company's software, the CMS they're using, the content management system they're using to create their listings and like send listings from platform to platform, decided that it was best to put the brand in all caps. Okay. But the drop-down menu does not have it in all caps. eBay will not read that. So Pontiac in all caps is not the same as Pontiac with just the letter P capitalized. You must use the drop-down menu. If you type in your own content, you will not, even if it's just a change to it, you will not appear in that filter. It won't happen. The main purpose of item specifics, and it's not about getting them all. Okay, so there's this misnomer that you've got to fill in the whole blue circle. And Harry Temkin, has changed Helix, which is the name given to the new unified listing tool. That's going to be the only tool in time. It now shows what looks more like an RPM meter instead of that lightning gauge with the blue circle. And to make it a little bit more obvious that you don't have to have the blue circle to appear at all. You don't. Right. Each filter that you fill in is going to let you show up for. So let's say that I'm selling the wheel and I type into wheel diameter, I type in 16.0. Okay. The option isn't 16.0, it's 16. Okay. So I'm not going to appear if I do 16.0. Let's say you're selling green t-shirts and it's a neon green t-shirt and you type in neon green, someone filters by green, you won't appear. Okay. We call that listing displacement. Okay. I want to get that term out there. Listing displacement is when you disappear from search because, generally speaking, because of the application of a filter and you didn't optimize for that filter. This happens on the category level when you're not in eBay's back-end category, and this happens on the item specifics level when you've either typed in your own information, which sometimes you have to do, okay? So, but there's all kinds of examples that I like to give on how a client has not wanted us to use the word plastic when they wanted acrylic, in the title, okay? If acrylic isn't one of the options and you type in acrylic, no matter what material someone filters by, you're not going to appear in search. Okay. Right. You have to choose whatever eBay has given you, and that's how you appear. The item specifics in your listing apply to this filter of the same name in eBay search. So when someone then filters by whatever, and you've selected that from the drop-down menu, that's how you know that you're going to appear. And for every one that you fill in, you will appear for that filter. It's filter by filter. So if you only do one, if someone filters by that particular filter in search, you will appear, even if you haven't done any of the others.
Right.
Okay. Even if you chose the least important one. I don't know why you would do that, but let's just say you did that. It's not going to hurt you if you only have done one. Now, I don't know why anybody would only do one, but let's just say, for example, that the only time you've got right now with your listings is 30 minutes a day, and you've got 2,000 listings. Once you've determined back-end category, from that point, your item specifics are going to be the most important thing, and you would do the topmost item specifics probably in every listing. That's going to help you for those filters. You will show up for those. You don't have to get every single one filled in. Be found in search for the filters that you did fill the item specifics out for.
So I'm going to just back up a really quick second and tell people, we talked a lot about the back end category in episode 8. Seriously, like, we went in depth about this. So go back and listen to that. Listen about the orange Bronco shirt and why categories are specific. We could probably talk about it another hour, but I want that information already exists. Go back and listen to episode 8 about that. But what I really like, and just to clarify, so item specifics, for those that don't know, when you are filling out your listing, they are in order of importance. So there will be a number on top of that. And that is how many times people have actually used the filter. So what you're doing when you are pulling that pull down menu for item specifics, what happens is, think like a buyer. You go on eBay and search for a t-shirt. I want a purple V-neck short sleeve t-shirt. I'm just going to type in t-shirt because I just want a t-shirt, right? Or a purple t-shirt. On the left-hand side as a buyer, I can choose V-neck. Right. I can choose purple. Those filters only show the pull down menu. So if you put fuchsia and I click purple, your listing will not be shown to me. Right. And that is what's called, what was that? Displacement.
Listing displacement. So it's displaced from search. It's not bumped down. It's missing. Okay. Right. It's been removed. And so, and that's purposeful. Okay. That's what makes marketplace search so beautiful, is that on Google, if I want to look for a black Metallica t-shirt, I have to type in every single thing that I want to be part of that list, to be part of what I see. Mm-hmm. Whereas within a marketplace, the filter system is meant to filter out the irrelevant listings. Mm-hmm. Okay. But you have to optimize for that. All right. If you haven't properly optimized for it, you're going to be one of the irrelevant listings, even though you're not. This is to make buyer search better. Now, yes, there are issues with item specifics, and there are going to be for some time yet, I think. I think long term, they're going to get this right, because these changes are tied specifically into the changes that they're making with the back end category, which means they're filtering specifically to a single category. And if you're not in that category, even though it might not be the one you think it ought to be in, if eBay says that's the one it goes in, that's the one it goes in. But that data is called buyer demand data. So that number of searches is from the last 30 days. And it's the buyer demand data simply says this filter was used this many times over the last 90 days. So, you can literally, in some cases, increase your visibility by 1 million potential views if you simply complete your item specifics.
And that concludes part 2 of our 3-part series on the Seller Community podcast of eBay SEO listing optimization with Dave Snyder. Stay tuned for episode 3.